Hello there. Today I'm tasting what I normally think of as a nice sort of classic, great value wine from the Medoc in Bordeaux. So this is Chateau Roque de By. It's from the 2015 vintage. And as I say, this is a Medoc wine, so it's from the Bas Medoc. The estate is located in as I say, the Bas Medoc, the northern part of the Medoc. We're about 10 kilometres north of the northern boundary of Saint-Estèphe. The estate's well located, it's on predominantly gravel soils, and its boundaries are about 200 metres from the Gironde estuary, so it gets quite a bit of influence in terms of moderation of hot summer temperatures and cold winter temperatures from the body of water that is the Gironde estuary. There's a predominance of gravel in the soil, which is quite liked by Cabernet Sauvignon, so it's a well situated vineyard. Historically, the first mentions of the estate are actually of an estate called Roque de By in 1599. It continues under that name until the Chateau is built there in 1876, when the name Tour de By is adopted, and that's relating to a prominent stone tower that sits in the middle of the vineyard. It's quite a sort of a stylized, tall, with a pointed roof, and it's very stands out. The estate's modern history, though, sort of starts in December 1965, when three families returning to France from Tunisia grouped together to buy the estate. And they pulled off quite a coup, really. In 1966, they managed to employ Émile Peynaud, the famed professor of oenology in Bordeaux, as their wine consultant. So a real sort of top name of his time, consulting on making the wines here. The three families, the Page family, the Lapeau family and the Caillou family, worked together until 1999, although I get the impression that Marc Page was the driving force in revitalising the estate here. And in 1999, the Page family, headed by Marc, bought the estate out from their partners. He lived on until 2007, continuing to run the estate, and today it's directed by his grandson, somebody called Benjamin Riche-Forge, and he's aided by a cousin of his, Frederic, and the two of them, quite young men, driving the chateau forward now. The estate here, as I say, has some quite deep gravel soils, which are well suited to growing Cabernet Sauvignon. So the planting here is about 60% Cabernet Sauvignon, with 35% of Merlot, and then there's 5% of Petit Verdot, and that is normally the blend of the wines. That's what it states on the back label here, anyway. In terms of winemaking, their cuvée, their Chai, is quite old. It was built in 1910, although they do have stainless steel tanks in there now as well. But there's a combination of stainless steel tanks and wooden fermenters, and those all have temperature control. So they'll ferment the wine, macerating it for sort of 8 to 10 days. They keep temperatures down to about 28 to 30 degrees, so they don't get too hot and over extractive. The wine is run off into barrel for aging. Those barrels are French oak barriques. A third of those are new, a third of those are second fill, and a third of those are third fill. So there's a rotation of a third of those barrels every year. Aging, I've seen different lengths of time, but in the region of 12 to 18 months, which would make sense. In different conditions, you would vary the length of time that you're aging these wines. Vine age was about 45 years, so you're getting some nice concentrated fruit, and as I say, the gravel soil suiting the Cabernet Sauvignon particularly well. So looking for quite a sort of a traditional style here. 2015, relatively warm vintage, getting quite sort of rich. Sometimes can be quite alcoholic. This particular wine is 13.5%, so it's not massively so, but let's see what we make of the wine. First thing, in terms of colour, we have some nice dark pigmentation. It's a deep ruby red. It's not quite opaque, but very nearly. There's a sort of almost an inky depth to the core there. As I swirl the wine, it actually forms tears quite readily on the side of the glass, and there's actually a little bit of colour staining as well. So let's have a look at the aroma, shall we? These are starting to open up. When I first sniffed this, probably about half an hour ago, it was very closed up, very developed, very earthy, very forest floor. It's still got a lot of those notes, but it's actually now showing much more of a sort of a lifted red plum and more of a dark sort of dams and bullace, dark plum sort of note. But there's still an earthiness, a cedriness, and yes, more of the sort of the dusty style of oak, not the vibrant sweet spices that you might get with a greater proportion of new oak. So that's for taste. Compared to the nose, there's a much greater freshness on the palate. It's quite forward. Again, there's that sort of red plummy note, almost with a pruny sort of hint there, but there's something textural about it. There's quite a sort of velvety note, some quite fine tannins there, but they're not necessarily drying in a dusty sort of way. Actually, there's a little bit of the sort of the sweet cedary spice coming through there, a little bit of almost pepperiness as well. There's a bitterness to the tannins, and the combination of the bitterness and the good acidity is actually quite mouth-watering and quite appealing. I'm not necessarily selling it in there, but there's a really nice combination there which would work very well with meat juices, for instance, in certain dishes. And it's enduring really nicely as well. The alcohol's in balance. This is a medium to medium full-bodied wine. There's a fair amount of tannin, there's a fair amount of roundness and richness to the fruit. Perhaps the sort of the slight bitterness is actually helping to pick up the finish there. There's a freshness too, and there are hints of sort of more concentrated licorice anise sort of notes on the finish too, along with, I suppose, the sort of the more dark plum notes coming through. The wine has reasonable length, but its good freshness is allowing its finish to show off some of that sort of dark fruit and also some more lifted red fruit. So I think this is a wine in quite a nice place at the moment, actually. I think it would very happily last for another 4 or 5 years, and you could keep it longer. It would, I suppose the tannins would become sort of smoother and more velvety. The oak notes would start to sit more with the fruit. But actually there's a sort of a richness to the fruit that I'm not convinced is for really long aging. I think it's very appealing now and probably best drunk in the next sort of 5 to 8 years or so. But yeah, a really attractive wine, quite a classic claret style from a warmer vintage, and showing really quite nicely now. So thank you very much for joining us. I do hope you find these tastings of interest. I hope you'll follow us on YouTube, follow our channel. Do please leave your comments. I'd love to hear what you have to say about this and other wines you've tried. But most importantly, I hope you'll find time to join us again for another tasting soon. Bye now.